What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Kaspa today, KAS USD. Hit that like button, subscribe, and thank you all for being here. It is the 20th day of May. Here we are sitting at about 3.4 cents with roughly 11 hours left in the day. Hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you all for being here, and let's get into it. Okay, let's talk about the price action. I actually want to look at this on a weekly time frame. And then do we have anything with reliable volume? I know you're not on every exchange. Maybe Bybit. We'll go over the history first, and then we'll go look at the short term stuff. Kaspa, in what was an absolutely historical uptrend, something that most cryptos never even dream of achieving. It was absolutely phenomenal. Over a 1,000x, nearly a 2,000x, I think, from the all time low. Crazy stuff. Has now been in a very long downtrend as well. I mean, when did this downtrend officially start? I suppose it would have started at the high, wouldn't it? Lower high. So from here and onwards, since July 2024, the very end of July, you've seen, maybe even the beginning of August, you've been seeing this downtrend form. And it's here we are nearly 2 years later. So this is quite the long bear market in response to what was an absolutely phenomenal bull market. I do believe that Kaspa, with its upbringing and its downbringing, I do believe that it has more to go. I do believe that in time you will see new all-time highs, and that there should be some exceptional growth going into the next cycle. I don't believe, however, that you're done with this bear market just yet. However, I do think that we have lower to go. And if we look at this here, you are still in your lower low, lower high trend overall. And what we're forming right now is just a consolidation phase, a kind of uh, maybe a bear flag. I don't know if I would call it that, but just a slanted upwards consolidation phase that will likely take you lower. I've been saying since the all-time highs, since before the all-time highs and afterwards, and ever since, that Kaspa will likely go below 2 cents. We haven't done that yet. I don't count October 10th as the day that we went below 2 cents. I don't really count that personally. Some people might, but I think that it's a scam wick. I don't think it actually exists. It's a conversation for another time. But if we look at this here, Kaspa drops to be about 90%. It drops 90% from its overall all-time high once you're right around 2 cents. Typically, most cryptos, when I say most, I mean 99.9% of them. You take 1,000 cryptos, you might find five, maybe five or less, that have dropped less than 90% in their very first bear market. I don't care what they are. It's how it is. Everything drops 90% or more in their first bear market. It's not that it doesn't happen. It's some coins have dropped less than 90% and they go on to form a new bull market, but it's very rare. CAS was a rare bird. So is Bitcoin, so is Dogecoin, so is Ethereum. They still dropped over 90% in their first bear markets. You know what I mean? 90% here would be right at 2 cents. We look back, and 2 cents to me doesn't really make sense. Whenever I say 90%, I really should say closer to 94%. Most cryptos do drop about 94%, 92, 97%, 99% in their first bear market. The difference between a 90% drop, though, and a 92% drop, it's pretty great, let alone a 94% drop. I mean, we look here, 92% would be right about there. That would be another, from the 90% market, that's another 20% drop right there. We look at 94%. That would be about a 40% drop, right? So it's a bit more. 90 to 94% doesn't sound that extreme, but if you're buying at 90% versus 94%, that is a 40% difference, more or less. And again, this here at 90% doesn't really line up with anything that makes sense to me. It would make more sense to find support somewhere around here, right around 1.3 cents, below 1.5 cents, maybe even as low as something right around 1 cent and just below 1 cent itself, right around the October 10th lows. This gives us, in my opinion, a very suitable range for where the bear market could end. And if we follow this trajectory, let me use a straight line because I can draw straight lines, but not on here actually. Let's just try and see if we can find something that makes sense. Not quite. We'll just use that. I think that trajectory there is fine. Could be a little bit better, I suppose. Let's do that. That there. To get down to this area, that would take us into October, well, October of this year or later, maybe even early 2027. And that sounds about right for me. That sounds about right as far as when I would expect altcoins to be seeing their bear market lows. You know, August, September, October, November, December, January, somewhere in that kind of 6 month time frame. That makes sense to me. You don't have to follow this line either. This line is kind of guiding us at this moment, kind of. And I say kind of because we really only have a couple touch points. But like this here, we could break below this line. We could get done with this bear market a lot earlier than it is assumed. It is completely possible that this is the low and that we don't go lower than this low as well. I'm not there yet. I don't personally hold to that belief, but it could happen. Even if we get above these highs, I would still say that we are in this lower high formation. You know, we're still in this lower high formation here. Maybe it's these highs here that we're in a lower high formation with. Whatever the case may be, we can move higher from this, and that doesn't mean that we're breaking out, right? We broke out of this area here to the upside. It was still in a downtrend. We broke out of this area here to the upside. We were still in a downtrend, okay? We can break out of this area here to the upside and still be in a downtrend overall. So even if Kaspa would have to effectively get above this high here at about 6 cents, 6.3 cents in order to invalidate the idea that we're going lower. We're at 3.4 cents. That is a bit of a ways away. That's unfortunate. But on the bright side, even buying here at 6 cents, even buying there, even if that's what it takes to invalidate and get bullish, buying there or waiting for a pullback to buy, this is still relatively cheap compared to where Kaspa will likely go in the next bull market, okay? I do think that we'll see a multi-dollar Kaspa in the next bull market. We're at 3.4 cents now, so that should be exciting. Anyways, this is just my long-term expectations. This is my long-term expectations. This is the same expectations that I've had. We've refined the time frame a little bit more, but this is the same expectations that I've had since July of 2024 and before and after and really this whole time. There was a moment where we got a little bit excited that the bear market could be over. I forget where that was. But we also thought that Bitcoin was still in a bull market. So, and I think Kaspa at that time had been moving. It must have been like July of last year. It must have been, yeah, here we had higher lows, had the prospects of going higher. I bet it was right here in this little pocket. Anyways, weekly time frame, looking at the RSI. An interesting thing about the RSI and the weekly time frame is you have broken out of this lower high dynamic, this little like lower high trend here. You still do have some respect for it, right? You still are finding resistance here, and you really could come back down to the oversold zone, but likely, or what we typically see as far as behavior goes in these RSI channels is that you'll go down to your oversold zone, which you have. You didn't really go that fierce into the oversold zone, but you did get oversold, and then from here you'll see a kind of sideways shift. You'll go from a downward sloping trend to a sideways sloping trend. Now this could last a little while. It could. Just because you're breaking out of the downward trend doesn't mean that you're done moving lower. In fact, Bitcoin might be a good example here. Let me just show you. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, here you started to break out of your upward sloping trend, right? You had an upward sloping trend here in your RSI. Then you formed a sideways trend. In this sideways trend, you didn't stop going up. You kept going up in this sideways trend. You kept going up. Now you're forming a downward trend. Now you're breaking down, right? Just because we're breaking out of this downward trend and moving sideways doesn't mean that we're done moving lower. It's the same thing, but to the opposite degree. That's all I'm saying. So likely we do go lower. I'm wondering here, should I take this low to high? Maybe I should take this low to high. We hit the money zone beautifully. Hitting the 2272 as resistance just further backs up my idea that we go lower. The 3618, the triple golden extension down into the 4114. That's all at like 1.5 cents to 1 cent itself. That's exactly the area that we've identified already throughout this video, right? That same kind of lower area to find support, and that would give us a greater than 90% drop overall. So I mean that makes sense to me. Let's look at a significant pivot here. This is probably the most significant pivot. It looks like the most significant pivot since this downtrend began in July of 2024. You know, that same money zone area, which we're finding support on now from this pivot, right? The money zone is here, but from this pivot, the money zone is there. That'd be just below 1 cent to 0.0076 cents. or $0.076. That's also a possibility. We could go lower. It is possible to go lower. That can happen as well. But looking at this 2272 to the 2886 area, I think that's a very appetizing area. 1.64 cents, $0.009. That area looks appropriate, and it does. If we keep dropping down here, it does line up with that time frame expectation of being here sometime in late Q3 or Q4, maybe even early Q1 of 2027. Okay, so I've said enough of the long-term stuff. You guys know where I'm at with it, right? I'm beating a dead horse at this point. I don't need to keep doing that. Let's look at the short-term stuff, and then we'll wrap this video up, okay? Daily time frame. Daily time frame here, we do have higher lows. Relatively speaking, you do have a flat top. I'm not wooed by this at all. What's more bullish? Having higher lows and a flat top, or breaking out of your consolidation phase? I feel like this is more bullish, and look at how far that got you. It's not that exciting. There's probably some people who are like, this is an ascending triangle. It's a very bullish formation. It's going to cause Kaspa to move up higher, and this means that the bear market's over for Kaspa. Maybe. I don't know who's saying that, but if I'm sure I'm not the only person with eyeballs. This is clearly an ascending triangle. But the thing is, bullish patterns behave less as expected in bearish trends, which you undoubtedly are. This pattern might have a 60% hit rate in a bull market where you would likely go higher, but in a bear market, which you were in, it doesn't hold the same weight. It doesn't hold the same weight at all. It's much more bearish, or the possibility of going higher is less likely, at least. Looking at the daily time frame here, looking at the RSI, you are at the same areas that you found support before. I think Bitcoin and Ethereum look like they want to move up a little bit. I mean, maybe they've already seen their moves. Maybe we're starting to move back down. I mean, that really could have been it. But you are at a point for support. So is Bitcoin, so is Ethereum. So I would expect that you move higher. Stochastics are oversold. Maybe come out of this a little bit. The MACD, right at the zero, we found support there before. We had a nice reaction. I'm expecting, because here we found support, so we're here now. Here we found support, and we're here now. Here we found support on the MACD, and we're basically here now. We got this reaction. What I'm expecting is a lesser reaction, a lower high. It'll be a lesser reaction. We won't get above 4 cents, and that lesser reaction will allow these things to provide more bearish implications and readings and cross below the zero here. We'll get a lower high and then lower lows, and that should be the beginning of this move that will break you out of this overall consolidation phase that you've been in now since February. So that should happen, I think, either by the end of this month or sometime in June. Probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we should see some prices that are below 3.2 cents, if I really had to guess. 4-hour time frame, let's just see how we're doing here. Looks like you want to move up higher, relatively speaking, yeah. So I think we're on the right side of the coin, calling for this to move up higher a little bit here. Stochastics look good. The MACD looks decent. I mean, overall it's bearish, but yeah, it looks decent. So I'm sticking with that. I think we move up a little bit. Let's go for a retracement off of this high here to a low here. The 382 is a fine area to hit. That's 3.6 cents. We've addressed that already. 3.61 cents is fine. And maybe all the way up here to the top of the golden ratio zone, which is where you found resistance before a couple times, 3.84 cents. 3.84, 3.61, somewhere in that area. That's probably where you find resistance, a lower high, and then you come back down. If I'm right in that assumption, it's the 20th now. You should see this happen within the next week, I would think, maybe the next 10 days, and then you move back down. If it happens really quick, cool. You're probably going to move down even quicker, but that's fine. I don't have anything else to say. I hope I've given you enough to think about here. Somebody requested in my last live stream that I make this a regular part of my analysis, so I will try to incorporate this at least once a week, if not more, into my videos. We'll keep an eye on Kaspa because, yes, Kaspa is one of those coins that I'm definitely interested in buying. Everyone called me a hater up here of Kaspa that I just didn't understand, and it's like, no, man, I want to buy it. Seems like a good project. I want to buy it. I still want to buy it up here. I want to buy it down here, and who cares what I want? But my wants will be fulfilled based off of statistics, based off of probabilities. I think I'll be able to get in at a much more suitable price. I want to get in. I want to buy. Oh, and that's what we're going to talk about, actually. I totally forgot. We're going to talk about the all-time high potential. Now, it's kind of hard to guess because we don't have our low, right? Imagine here, this is our bear market low. The 1272 is here at 37 cents. But if we move this lower, the 1272 goes higher. So the lower we go, the higher your bull market expectations could be. Let's say we go to 1.5 cents. I do think that we probably go a little bit below there, but let's say we go to 1.5 cents. That would imply that these targets are more or less conservative, and that we would likely go above them. If we can snag this thing, let's just say, it goes to 1.5 cents or lower. Let's say that you start to DCA. I might start to DCA below 2 cents. The minimum target there would be at 21x. That's 42 cents. I don't think it stops there, but that's the minimum target. The 1618 is not even the maximum target, but this is just the primary target zone, the 1272 to the 1618. So that's a 21x to potentially a 54x. 21 to 54x. That's a good first target range, I think. That's decent returns for a coin that will have a multi-billion-dollar market cap at that point. If it continues to run, we get above the golden ratio. We then gain access to the secondary target zone, which is the 1886 to the 2618. Now, I will say, before you start drooling, I don't think we're getting to $14. I don't think we're going to see a $14 KAS next cycle. But the 2272 is something that a lot of cryptos like to mess with in their secondary cycles. I mean, we look at this here. Let's just see from this pivot from a high to a low. Look at that. Look at where he stopped. Look at exactly where he topped was the 2272. Literally right there. You were just below it, but right there. It's perfect. Maybe that's a foreshadowing of things to come. We look at this here. We take this high to this low here. 2272 just above it. That's where you stopped. You found a lot of resistance and support there. Okay? It's not that you can't go higher, but we're talking about some exceptional growth here. I would think primary target zone 21x to 53, 54x, whatever that was. The secondary target zone, which I do believe is attainable, would be around $2.10 to $5.78, maybe even just above there. It's not uncommon to wick above the 2272. We're looking at anything from like a 100x to 313x potential if you snag this at 2 cents. Now, what if it goes below 1.5 cents? Well, now that's a 400 and something x if you go just above the 2272. Now that's 150x if you go to the 1886. Now, at a bare minimum, if you snag it below 1.5 cents, maybe you get it at 1.3 cents. Right here, in line with this low over here. Actually, let's put it in line with that low. You probably won't get that exact low, right? Maybe if it tips that low, you get a little bit, but you're probably going to average overall through, right? Like probably here, maybe if you're buying in that area, maybe. That 20x turns into about a 30x. That's all I'm trying to say. So your growth potential grows tremendously if you do this right, if you DCA properly, if you really try to snag those low prices. Don't, and not financial advice, not a financial advisor, don't focus so much on trying to achieve the absolute low. I think DCAing will be the way to go, and I really do plan on DCAing once it's below 2 cents. But even though I fully expect that we could drop all the way down to 1 cent, I think that that's fine. Go to 1 cent, whatever. I'm going to be buying in over a period of time. I don't expect that what's going to happen is Kaspa hits this level and then it moves up like this. I would expect that what we see is some type of long accumulation range, and then we start to really get our freak on as 2027 develops. A little bit of pullback here and there. Freak on going into 2028 as well. I think 2028 will be the year that you top off. And if I'm correct in my assumptions, $2.10 to $5.80 would be the target area. I don't think $14 is going to happen personally. Hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.